So more net zero madness as the Cumbria coal mine shuts down. And we all know that long-term, this will only put a strain on the consumer. Because what we are doing is we are exporting our energy sources to countries like China, India, and Saudi Arabia. So they stand to make all the money. And it's ironic for me that because we all live on the same planet, so exporting CO2 emissions doesn't actually help the environment. I'll give you another example. We ban plastic straws and we move to paper straws. But paper straws are made out of trees and they don't really work. So I don't really understand this net zero policy because it's not doing us any favors. We are losing money and we're at the same time putting more strain on the consumer. So Darren.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say to anyone who is on the green side of the argument, right, and saying, oh, my goodness, we can't possibly build a new coal mine, the first in, what, 30 years. But the fact of the matter is you need coal to build steel, for cement, for heritage railway. There are so many ways in which we still need coal, not for the whole energy supply as it used to be, of course, but we still need it in limited scenarios. Well, limited cement's not all that limited,
well,
right?
Steel's fairly important as well.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that if you want to build those great big whopping wind farms, well, guess what? You need steel, you need cement. Why not get the coal that you need for that here in Britain instead of importing it from, dare I say, Australia or Russia, even worse? Well, worse. Well, I don't know. Australia's gone a bit.
It's going in that direction.
This particular coal mine was actually going to be the greenest coal mine on Earth anywhere. It was going to be closed. It wasn't open casting, so it was going to be safe and it was going to be providing what we're going to use anyway. So we are now going to ship it in from all of these far countries. There's a massive and bigger cost to that. We are not going to see in 30 years' time that we don't need coal. We are going to need coal. All of those other countries that Eunice mentioned are rubbing their hands together in glee. Saudi Arabia is now making steel because we aren't. And with that, we're losing our jobs and our communities.
The fact of the matter is, and the reason this is so annoying, this whole debate, is that it is symbolism. This coal mine, as with every other net zero initiative, will not make 1 ounce of difference to global emissions in the greater scheme of things.
Yes.
And therefore I do not understand, and Matthew, I dare say you may be the one to argue against me here. I've never heard a rationale for why you would...
I know what's coming. I can speak up.
Why would you put symbolism? Why would you put symbolism ahead of everyday British people? I do not understand.
Well, just one or two quick thoughts on this. It is obviously true that to the extent that we might be, as it were, exporting or importing our net zero, so if we are importing goods here because we no longer make them here because we want to get to net zero by 2050, then that's not great. And there should be no deception in any of this. It all needs to be transparent, and I'm sure it is. I was trying to look up some of the stats before we came on air. But the wider picture here is that if climate change continues in the way that it is, we all suffer. It might take longer for us in this country to suffer than it would, say, as you say, in Bangladesh, which is very low-lying and is at risk of going underwater, parts of it. But in the end, it is in all of our interests. And you talk about symbolism, Will. I accept that symbolism doesn't get you anywhere if it's empty. But in order to show global leadership, and I want Britain to be a global leader...
Do you think China is going to follow us, do you?
We have to hope so, but what we certainly can't do is we certainly can't get round the table with countries like China and impress upon them the importance of getting to net zero if we aren't doing our own bit.
I mean, this is what you say about human rights as well. Oh, the UK's got to allow these criminals to come in.
No, it's not. It's a very different argument.
And kill people in Britain, and then we can't get rid of them because we don't want Russia to think we're mean and nasty.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
This is the only argument I've ever heard, which is we need to be a global leader. And the one thing that has been proven over the last 5 years is that Russia, is that China couldn't care less what the West thinks.
So we don't just put our head in the sand on this, because climate change is real and it represents a risk to all of us. No, not so says me. So says the overwhelming consensus of science on our planet says that climate change is not just real, but it is also happening.
Let's let Eunice come back. So on that point, on 2 points Matthew has made, Labour's needs to be transparent on this. Are they being transparent on it? I don't think they are.
No.
And secondly, we're 1% of global CO2 emissions. Why are we killing ourselves in the name of this climate cult?
I just think it's virtue signalling, because even the Paris Climate Agreement, countries like America, UK, Europe had to, comply with the regulations. But then countries like China, India, Russia, Saudi Arabia didn't have to. So they stood to grow their economy exponentially whilst we are going downhill. And I just don't think, look, when I came out of university, I believed in this whole environmental hoax. But the more I study it, the more I realize that it's actually nonsense.
Like Renee, you don't believe in climate change?
Because look,
you don't believe in man-made climate change.
I don't believe the fact that we have so much influence over it, because thousands of years ago, the global temperatures were 2 degrees higher. There was 2 ice ages. To think that humans emit so much CO2. And as Darren said, we're only 1% of global emissions. What are you going to do about China? What are you going to do about
There are two different arguments.
Okay.
It's really important. There are 2 different arguments, right? One is, can we have an impact? And of course, we are only about 1%. The question is whether we can lead the world or influence the world if we don't do our bit. And I would argue we have to do our bit. But on your other point, you should read the overwhelming scientific consensus, which says that climate change is real. You could sit here with no expertise and tell the viewers that it doesn't exist. No, I'm sorry. Well, this is an important point, because I'm 1 against 4 here. And I'm 1 against 4 here. No, I haven't made my point clearly enough.
There's a body of work there. We should all...
An overwhelming global consensus that means that Eunice's view, with all due respect to Eunice, means nothing.
You have made that point, Matthew. All right, we've got a question from Cassandra. Cassandra says, transporting coal from another country is more CO2 intensive due to the use of CO2 in transportation. The same amount of coal would be used whether it mined locally or transported. So how does the refusal to open a new coal mine in Britain reduce CO2?
Exactly.
Matthew.
As I've already said, we as a world face a crisis. We as a country are part of that crisis. We've got to do our bit. I have also said that it isn't good enough simply to cut back on our own, as it were, natively created emissions and then export or import some of them. It has to be joined up, and it has to be transparent.
So you would say to Ed Miliband, this is the wrong thing?
No, I would not say that to Ed Miliband. I think it's probably the right thing to do, because I think the signal and the symbol, to use Will's word, of the UK, which is committed to net zero, the symbol of us opening a new coal power plant, is negative.
I can even if I was to accept that argument, this is about prioritisation. So if you prioritise the possibility that we may be a leader in climate solutions, whatever that means, compared with the very real and urgent impact that this has on everyday British people who are already struggling to pay bills. This isn't necessarily about whether either argument is right. This is about prioritisation, and we need to prioritise people who are struggling today.
What is that impact? Just spell out that impact.
Higher energy bills. 3 words.
So look, Al Gore tweeted many years ago, said in a documentary he made, that by 2013 all the ice caps will be melted. Greta Thunberg said 5 years ago, in 2018, that, in 5 years' time, the world will end if we don't do anything about the climate. So we had prediction after prediction after prediction that says, the world is collapsing, and none of them...
Greta Thunberg said that the world would end in 5 years' time.
Yeah, back in 2018, and she actually did it. Exactly.
I'm not here to defend Greta Thunberg, but she's certainly not a scientist.
No, but his point is, though, that it's alarmism.
No, but I follow the science.
It is an alarmism, and look, what you are doing, you're sacrificing everyday people. Everyday people have to pay a much higher fee for energy, and on a, premise that, the world will end soon, so we all have to pay higher costs.
I never said the world will end soon. I said we're facing critical climate change and that we have to do something about it.
If there's critical climate change, surely the world would, therefore, we would all drown.
No, it depends what you mean by the word critical. If you brought up Bangladesh, to give a very straightforward example, since you teed it up, if Bangladesh goes underwater because of climate change, it's low-lying and sea levels go up, where do you think those people are going to want to live? In London,
this is the other thing. We're so selective with the science that we end up choosing. If we increase temperatures globally, then you have less cold deaths in the UK, and there are more cold deaths by a factor of 10
come on.
We need fossil fuels.
That's a completely acceptable argument. We just choose not to pick that one because it doesn't suit the narrative.
Yeah, indeed.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk, and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.